Hello, everyone, and welcome to Painless Universal, a conversation with myself and Welsh. You saw the headline in 2015 that sparked a massive debate. And that debate was the identification race. Pain. Who are you? Are you black? Are you white? My guest was thrown in the spotlight in 2015 when a video footage was shown of her as white, where she almost looks like she's mixed race / black. That caused tremendous amount of pain because it erased years of work she's been doing for the Black community. My guest today is Rachel Dolezal. In 2015, after footage of a small segment of an interview she did found its way onto the internet, an article appeared in a local paper outing her as white. She became one of the hottest trending topics of the everyday news. Her book, In Full Color, talks about finding my place in the black and white world. I'm truly honored for this privilege to talk to Rachel about her own journey of racial identification. The pain she went through because of this footage, what led her on this journey, and how is she finding her joy? Meet our amazing Rachel Dolezal. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Conversation with myself and Welsh. As I said, today we're talking about identification, race, pain, and our special guest, Rachel Dolezal, we're talking about her own challenges and how she found her own joy. Rachel, thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing well. Yeah, and you?
I'm well. I can't complain. The weather is not great here. I'm not in the United Kingdom, London. The weather is awful, and we're threatened with a second level lockdown. So we're hoping keeping positive here. So I'm fine. And you? How is it out there where you are?
Yeah, it's beautiful here in Tucson, Arizona. So we moved from Spokane, Washington to Tucson last July in 2020 during the pandemic. But it is just the weather here is amazing. It's sunny almost every day, blue sky. Yeah, my oldest son Isaiah, when he came back from Manchester, he mentioned, he's like, it was raining in the UK so much and gray sky and it's so blue, and you know, he said it's so refreshing here in the desert. The only challenge is, of course, it's very dry, so it dries out hair and skin and things like that. But I love the warmth. It's like a hug, you know. It's just so nurturing compared to the north where it was so cold and the winters were so harsh. So yeah, we like it here.
I agree with you because the cold weather does something to me. It makes me shaky all the time. The heat is constantly on. I'm always cold, and I'm just like, I wish I could just be in a place where there's constant sunshine. Before we get into diving into some parts of the book that would really excite people, can you just tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, so I'm an artist. I'm also an activist for over 20 years, and I'm an author, as you just mentioned. But above all, I'm a mother. So you know, my sons are so important to me, and being a mother for so many years. My oldest being 26, and my youngest is 5. So I remember still when Isaiah was 2 weeks old and in diapers, and I was sewing, as you know from the book, cloth diapers because we couldn't afford to buy Pampers, and so it was yeah, he was in cloth diapers. My youngest did not have cloth diapers. I felt like I earned my right to actually buy disposable diapers. But anyway, motherhood has been such an important part of my life because I'm 43, and so for 27 years of my life, I was involved with with nurturing my siblings, my younger siblings, and then my own children. And so that's kind of like a core part of my identity.
And I like that. I like that because it's really a very important one for me. The same thing that goes the same with myself. It's really about my kids, my siblings, and just that's the core part. And a lot of people forget that out when they are on our ask who are you? They start mentioning the jobs, and I just love your simple answer. Your kids are everything. The 2015 when that broke out, because that would help me dig into your book. When that news broke out, where were you? Were you at home, or were you, what were you doing?
Yeah, well, it was actually the morning of Isaiah's 21st birthday.
No.
So we were at home, we're just getting up in the morning, and he, basically was sitting on the couch. I remember he was in tears because people were reaching out from from formerly his high school, because he was 21, so he's in college at that point. But students that he went to high school with were reaching out to say, why did you lie to us? That's not your real mom. All kind of weird accusations. And so he was just like, this is not how I wanted my 21st birthday to go. So that was kind of where we were. We were at home. It was in the morning, and it kind of pivoted off of what seemed to be just a local story. Like, why would that local story go national, let alone global?
Yeah.
It was like, who really cared who my parents were? I mean, why did it matter to the whole world? I guess was what we didn't see that coming.
Yeah, because I'm based in UK, and we're having this conversation about that. So the whole world,
right.
It mattered a lot to the whole world. So there must be something within the whole world that made them question. We don't know. I like your chapter 1 of your book. And the reason I love chapter 1, you said we don't get to choose our parents. We don't.
Right.
And you started with that word. That was the first like literally first line. I was thinking, why did she start with that very porchy, interesting headline? We don't get to choose our parents. Why did you use those sentences?
Yeah, I use that because I think sometimes children are sort of blamed for the perspective, the worldview, the actions even of their parents. And I don't think that's fair. In my case, my biological parents went on every national TV network to, discredit me, shame me. And as you know from the story, to basically save their oldest biological son from going to prison for child abuse, child molestation and sexual assault. So it was, just kind of like a lifelong struggle for me to ever even be accepted by my biological parents. And I felt constantly in that family like I was atoning for existing. Like, since I was born, being blamed for almost killing my mother because she had hemorrhaged and there was no doctor because Jesus Christ was the only person there that, on the birth certificate. It was just like so bizarre, but like, I didn't choose any of that. I was coming into the world as an innocent child, and we don't necessarily get to choose or decide how we approach our life at the onset. We just enter it, and then all of these external factors are incoming, and we have to stand up to all those waves of rejection and information, and you should do this, you should do that. And I think at a very early age, some of that rejection even helped shape a more solid grounding of who I am, because I had to be very clear on who I am internally as a person, because there was so much pressure to be something else or to be this or that within the religious perspective, as well as the patriarchal view and all those things. As a girl, you were supposed to do this. As a Christian girl, you're supposed to do, you know, specifically these things. And so it was kind of a positioning of just bracing that storm since my earliest memories, you know. So I think it was important to put that in the first chapter. Just, you know, I didn't choose this, but this is what I was born into, and this is then what I had to contend with. And, you know, for some people, they're very close to their biological parents, and there's that bond, and then there never was that bond for me. It was always a feeling of being an outsider within that family, a feeling of being other and, you know, not okay. And that was tough, you know, for a kid. But so yeah, that's kind of why I started the book, you know. And it was this process of, like, you know, some memoirs start with a later anecdote and then get back to the birth stage or whatever. I thought, you know, with all of those options, I thought, you know, the only place to really start is just at the beginning.
I love that. It was really good, because it tells a story which is difficult to miss anything. You can't miss anything because of the story is told so well. You know, that's why it goes on to my question is, did you start embracing the Black culture from your younger brother? Because I remember you talk so much about, in the first, I think chapter 2, you go on to your younger brother. Is that when the whole embracement started, do you think?
So actually, you know, you're using the word embrace. I had a sense of connection with Black is beautiful, Black history, Black culture, early on, you know, before that.
Okay.
So from my first self-portrait, as you probably saw in the book, you know, to, you know, so my artwork has also been a very, you know, my, like, as I said, when you said, who are you? And my first thing is I'm an artist, because I create, as it's been something I've done since I was so little. And it seems to sometimes make more sense to people when they see an image than if you try to explain in words. And so I feel like, you know, there was that connection early on, and I can't say, oh, it came from this place or that place, because I was only 4 years old. You know, it was just my earliest memories and my dolls that Aunt Becky sewed, you know, the Black Raggedy Ann and Andy. And I don't, you know, it's like, where did that come from? I don't know. You know, I'm not claiming to, some people say, well, have you thought about reincarnation? Have you thought, and it's just like, I don't need to know. I don't have the need to, like, define it and say it came from this specific place. No. But that connection it was just there, you know, for whatever reason, I just felt that connection. And when my adopted siblings came, Ezra and then Isaiah and then Esther and Zach, it was, which they all came pretty back to back. I mean, these are babies all within a year and a half of each other. So 4 babies in diapers, 4 babies potty training, you know, it's like Isaiah and Zach are 5 days apart. I mean, these are like very, very close together. So I felt a bond with my younger Black adopted siblings, because you know, I don't necessarily know that it was just because I had an interest in Black history and culture and had already read James Baldwin and all these things before they came to the household, but for whatever reason, I felt more like they were my family, and, you know, I was there to protect them. Yeah. From pain, you know, and to in some kind of way help them navigate that family and that life in Montana.
Yeah, and you did do it that well, because you said you spent time with this your beautiful Black family, adopted family. You used to bathe them, you dress them, you rock them to sleep. You found yourself drawing closer to them. So I know it's understandable that you were constantly around them. You were constantly, you know, working, doing things with them, and, you know, keeping them. But one thing I really found interesting, and I wish I had someone like you growing up, is that mothering nature of not just being a mother, But a mother who's a sister who saw things through a different lens. You said you wanted to be a cultural translator. It's like, so helping them navigate the white world safely while trying to keep their black culture. So you were not trying to say, okay, I'm not gonna change who you are, but I'm just gonna navigate it because you saw this based on that when you go shopping, the dolls had white futures, the books had white characters. So you wanted them to understand, yes, you are adopted into a white home, but at the same time, we need to understand who you are. Where did this compassion come from? Because it's really so beautiful that you did such an amazing thing that you had these siblings who were black, but you also wanted them to understand the world they were truly living in.
Yeah, I think it came in part as a compassion for my younger self. You know, feeling alone and feeling like I didn't have anybody to look out for me and nurture me in that way and say, you know, I see what you like and I see these drawings that you're doing and that's wonderful. Instead of that, it was always, don't do that. That's wrong. That's bad. Don't be this way. You know, you can't wear braids. That's, you know, sinful. It's this, it's that. And so I feel like I wanted to show up for them because no one had showed up for me as a young child. And so I also just seem to notice, I seem to be the only one actually that noticed in that kind of the all white family, and even in Montana, the almost all white environment, you know, the small town, and there's very little non-white population of any kind. And so I just always seem to be the only one that noticed those kinds of things of why, you know, there's a black child playing with a white doll. Like that's not, you know, sending, you know, maybe this is not sending the right message. I mean, why is the standard and the normal always European? Why is the book about, you know, even the children's Bible or whatever, why does it have all white kids with white Jesus, you know? And so as you probably remember from the book, you know, I'd gone through the whole children's Bible and made sure that every picture where Jesus was holding kids in his lap, like there were black children too. And, you know, just because I was thinking like, what a damaging, you know, psychological impact this could have, similar to how I felt, you know, as a girl, and just for what I was drawn to as a young child, I felt like I was redirected, right? And I didn't want them to be redirected from who they were. And so, yeah, and again, it's just, you know, it seemed like I was the only one that even saw these things, which which seemed very obvious. But I wrote the little children's book for Esther, you know, with the changeable, you know, the doll with changeable hairstyles instead of changeable clothes. And, you know, just wanted them to be, as a mother, you know, like you just want these little beings to grow and flourish and to shine and to love themselves. And I feel like that's also I was homeschooling in order to raise the babies, because my biological mother seemed to have herself diagnosed chronic fatigue syndrome, so she was too tired to take care of the kids. And so I definitely had the mother role in a very practical way, and also in a heartfelt sense too.
No, but for me, being a black girl, I can imagine that when I read this bit, I felt so compassionate because I just felt there's sometimes, again, with my own little black girls, I always make sure they have black dolls. I always worry about them. I always worry about representation. Who's going to represent you? If you only see white, how would you know you are beautiful? I worry about them going to school. I worry about the hairstyle. And this brings me to the hair bit, because you have hair, you talk about hair, part 1 and part 2 about hair. And this is a very vital subject because a lot of people might come out at you, but we Black have always been insecure about our hair. because we've always been told it's not good enough. A lot of kids have been kicked out of school because of their hair. And you saw that gap, which when you were looking after your young little, your siblings, you noticed there was an issue with the black hair shampoo, black hairstyles. But rather than you sit back and let this just be an issue, you decided to address it and learn to do it. Rachel, I have to ask you again. This is such a difficult thing for many people to do. Why did you see this as a problem? Because it's really truly a problem for Black people, and it's a conversation we're not comfortable talking because we haven't learned to deal with it. But you understood the problem we go through. There was a big gap. How did you how did you address that for us?
Well, I saw it as a problem really caused by white people, you know, in terms of setting European beauty as the standard. And that caused the problem of this dissonance of this is not good enough or this is not right. You know, straight hair is the standard, you know, the curlier it gets, you know, the kinky curly hair is not good hair. And if your baby's born with the wavy hair, it's good hair that's manageable. And just kind of, you know, feeling like, once again, this would not be something that would build self-esteem for not only my younger brothers, but also my only younger sister, within the world of beauty as women. Visual culture is so impactful. And I just always felt like there was something fundamentally wrong. Like, why did European standards why did that become the standard of beauty? Because curly hair holds braids better, you know, like I don't know, there's certain functions of hair that really it's not right or wrong or good or bad. It's just certain textures do certain things. So like with art, plaster does a certain thing with, you know, as a material for sculpture. Clay, it lends itself to other things, you know, carving wood lends itself to other things for sculpture. So when it comes to hairstyling, straight hair is, you know, capable of doing certain things, but kinky curly hair is capable of doing other things. And it's just, you know, why did one have to be good or bad or right or wrong?
Yeah.
And so I also just felt like there was a void in Montana in this homogenous society where very few Black citizens, you know, I actually didn't see very many Black adults during my childhood, right? So there was no Black hairdresser in the whole area, you know, but there were adopted Black kids, mixed kids, and nobody was making an effort to do Black hair. You know, it was like either just cut it off, which was devastating for girls, or, you know, straighten it, relax it, straighten it, do something. So I started braiding. Yeah, actually, I'm making a set of faux locks for my very first hair client in Montana. You know, so this is 28 years ago. I started doing her hair before my sister even came into the family. So she was adopted by another family and nobody knew how to do Black hair. And it was just, you know, I was like, I'll do it. You know, like I'll just look at pictures and figure it out. You know, the braid, I figured out that, you know, the French braids are the braids that a lot of the white girls were doing were over. And to get the braid to stand up, you had to braid under for cornrows. So it just was always, you know, part of my creativity, and also just part of that, having that insight that there's a void. There's nobody here in this community that's doing this thing that needs to be done. And nobody that's showing up for these kids to say, wow, your hair is beautiful. You know, I just had a hair client yesterday. I was like, you know, your hair texture is amazing to work with. And she's like, I've never heard that before. I'm like, no, it's amazing, you know, because she was starting to get locks, and it's like the tighter the coil, the better for locking, you know? So it's just like, I don't know. I think it's important to have kind of an objective view of textures and colors and things like that. You know, as an artist, it's not good or bad or right or wrong. It's just, what does this do? You know, what does that texture do? And how to make it shine.
No, absolutely. Because I wear mine straight, and this is a weave. My natural hair is very long and kinky, but I can't maintain it. I just don't know how, because there isn't many hairdressers here. And try and tell people, they don't understand. Black people are learning to do it themselves, but it's still very, very difficult. When when I'm in Africa, Nigeria, for example, it's easy. I could get someone just down the road, someone know what to do with my hair. But now, so what do? I put straight weave, and also it fits with what the European world wants me to look like. This is so I brought into it, but I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, well, no, but see, that's the thing, is that I think it's two things going on with what you just brought up, because there's the European standard, and yes, that's kind of why we had relaxers and why the the advent of straight weave and trying to change the texture from kinky curly to straight was initially about that. But I think right now in our modern world, I mean, there's so many textured weaves now, right? With the the naturalistas, and this is not this is like a crochet weave, but it's like there's so much textured hair out there that that is not real hair growing out of people's heads, right? But I think that people sometimes mistake it as a political statement. Sometimes hair is a political statement, sometimes it's not.
And just make it not so much a big deal that it's just one of the things, who we are, who we're born with. There's nothing we could really do about it. I love it in your book when you explained, you really opened up here. You said you had it in you to help. For example, you broke a lot of barriers by living in a Black neighborhood. So you didn't go there as a white savior, a white ally, but you went there to make a social statement. What was that? Why did you decide to live in a Black neighborhood?
So in Mississippi, when I was in college, there was definitely still segregation, as there are in many southern cities to this day. Not segregation officially, but just unofficially, socially, there's still the Black side of town and the white side of town. And it's literally divided in Jackson, Mississippi with the train tracks. And so when somebody says I live across the tracks, that usually means, I live in the Black neighborhood, not in the white neighborhood. So I went to school, actually, I got an art scholarship to go to Belhaven College, which is now Belhaven University in Jackson. And that was in the North, a very white college. My mentor, Spencer Perkins, in college, he actually was the first Black student to integrate Belhaven College. And when I went to Jackson, I asked him to be my mentor, and he was like, well, we should meet first and let's talk about it. And then he was so surprised that I knew how to dig worms for fishing, that as a girl, like I was fine with digging up worms for fishing. He was like, okay, you're fine. You can be part of the family. But anyways, I felt like it was almost a revolutionary act to go against the trend. So the trend was for gentrification, for white flight out of, the Black neighborhoods, or even desegregated neighborhoods, for white people to start moving away. And Spencer's dad, Dr. John Perkins, he had this idea of relocation, reconciliation, and redistribution for people with resources, and or people who had lighter complexions, to move into the Black neighborhoods, to bring like that would economically revitalize, as well as counter or disrupt that trend of segregation. So not only was I thinking of all that, but I also was just thinking of, this is where I feel more at home. Exactly. And this is where my mentor lives. This is where my church family at that time, was. And so I was always happy to go home. And then, going to college, it was kind of like the struggle of trying to reform that university from starting the first African American history course, which still exists today, to starting trends, for recruitment and retention of Black students, which it went from 5% Black my freshman year to 15% by my senior year, and now is over 50% Black as an institution.
Wow. Now I'll go into this question, because you did so much work for Blacks, and I can't applaud you even harder. I can't, even if I start, I will never get, my hands cannot keep clapping how much work you've done for the Blacks. You emphasize our hair issue, which is something that burns me every day, especially with my own girls. You emphasize issues to deal with the lack of knowledge in toys, which is the industry is gradually changing. And the book industry, when you read books, you automatically, as a Black person, just think that this is the norm. You don't know what your own identity is, and you've worked so hard for the culture side of things to help that emphasis of the culture, people understanding the culture. That in all of that, when 2015 hit, people forgot all of that. That was deleted. That was instantly deleted. That work that you've done from my community, people like myself, was all deleted because of footage. Would you have approached your life differently, knowing this pain would happen when that footage came out?
Well, back to our earlier part of our conversation where I kind of studied, like, I don't think we get to choose how we approach our life.
No.
So I don't know that I would have, I mean, certainly we want to avoid pain, right? But I don't know that there were any perfect decisions to make that could have been different, that would have, that, it would have been choosing one form of pain for another form of pain or something. Like, there was no real clean way to navigate this totally race obsessed society where no matter what I did, if I was being authentic, it was gonna piss somebody off. It was gonna rub somebody the wrong way. And so I feel like, the experiences of acceptance and rejection, although, I mean, they can be very, rewarding or very painful, the acceptance piece, the rejection piece. I just don't think it's possible to really fundamentally change who we are. We just have to show up as ourselves and brace against the rejection and enjoy the acceptance when it comes. But, it feels very surreal to me still, looking back on that year, how I was, doing all these lectures and community courses and teaching at the university and president of NAACP and chairing the Police Ombudsman Commission, to counter police brutality back then, before it was, globally actually an accepted trending movement. Yeah. But working with the Department of Justice to undo bias in policing. And I feel like it's surreal because I was winning awards for my work the month before then the whole world was shaming me for who my biological parents were, basically, and how my life had evolved over time. It was just, there was no way to explain in a soundbite how I came from this teepee in Montana to be the NAACP president. Any shorter version of that, other than my book, felt disingenuous, and it felt like it wasn't conveying my story properly enough to reach understanding. But I do feel like we just have to be ourselves. So I don't know that I could have, I've thought through this a million times, like, what could I have done differently? And I truly feel like every decision along the way was thoughtful, and with the information I had at the time, the best decision that I thought I could have made. I'm not perfect, but I look back and I think, like, I don't know how, like, what could I have done to prevent pain? I mean, pain was there from the day I was born.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that I could prevent it, but healing from it in order to find joy, I think is my constant quest.
That brings me to my next question, because I was like, because of the pain you've endured since 2015, how are you using this knowledge more positively to bring yourself and others, your kids, your siblings, all the people who still stood by you? How are you bringing them joy from this pain that this has happened, brought to you?
Yeah, I think since 2015, it's just been a matter of focusing on the simple things. Initially, I was really trying to, of course, support my sister in her court case, for example, to get justice. She never did get her day in court due to the overwhelming agreement of the world with the bio parents that I was, not truthful, per their suggestion. And then, so her case got thrown out because I was her key witness. And that was their whole intention anyway of doing what they did. So trying to show up for her, support her, I wrote the book, even also as an effort to get it out as quickly as possible it was published in 2017, but for a whole year, publishers denied publishing my book. And so it was too late to save her case. Her statute of limitations ran out before I was able to shift the narrative. But that was something I was working to do because, of course, there's pain prevention, which, blocking and deleting people on social media, trying to win the court case, all that kind of stuff. But then there's also the other side of it to try to bring joy to my sister, to my sons, my three sons, and even to myself, just in terms of cooking things that they like to eat and getting outside and trying to be physically active and keep our physical health, because that's so crucial to mental health. A lot of mental health decline sometimes it is spiraling along with physical decline. And so trying to get out of the house, even if it's not easy for me to be seen, but what can we do as a family to stay active, to get out, to do things, and also just a lot of deep conversations with Franklin and Isaiah and my sister. Yeah, just kind of showing up for them, and my friends have been so generous and beautiful. The very small handful of core friends who really really were there for me, that it's just been it's been beautiful to see that there are some people there. And my dad was a part of that. My adoptive dad, Albert Wilkerson, he was definitely part of that healing and joy. He passed in 2018, so he's he wrote the foreword to the book.
Yeah, it's amazing. Oh.
And I actually was able to help in his final days transcribe his autobiography. So it's now on Amazon.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, so after he passed, though, that was the end of family for me, other than my kids. There's nobody else. My kids and my siblings, I would say, Zachariah and Ezra both have since reached out and apologized for their part in the situation in 2015, and have kind of tried to make amends, and we have, our relationship is rebuilding, but so I feel like, yeah, it's just the normal stuff. I mean, there's no magic wand. Unfortunately, with this situation, it's not over. Like, there's ongoing hate coming in. There's ongoing opposition every day. Even this morning, I just was dealing with something, and it's an ongoing battle. I still can't get a job. There's just, so the situation is hard to heal from something that keeps happening. But I think I've found, some ways to at least kind of compartmentalize and put it over here. Like, I'll deal with that, but I'm also going to show up for this interview, or I'm going to, still cook dinner. I'm not going to let it derail the whole day, derail, our possibility of having some joyful moments throughout the day. And I just have to say, I know that it was a little long-winded here, but Langston has autism. He has a diagnosis of autism, and he's nonverbal, but his very first word and something he says when he wakes up every morning is happy. So he wakes up and he says happy. And to be honest, like, that's just the perfect thing to start the day. It's like only word. I think he's just like, that's the only word we need, is just happy. Just start there.
He's born to bring the joy. Happy. I love that. I need that. I need an alarm clock that says happy, 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 happy. You need that. Oh, that's amazing. That's really sweet. Before I get to my final question, I wanted to ask you about the future. So much has happened in the news. You've seen all that's happened since the pandemic. I think it brought out a lot. The Black Lives Matter came out more. The Black people realizing the oppression they're going through. Just so much just happened since then. There's this question out there, the big debate about who are you? Who are we truly? And who is to decide if we're Black or if we're white? There's that big debate currently going on. That didn't happen in 2015, but it's currently coming out now. People are asking more and more questions about who has the right to decide for us what we decide, where we decide we fit in. Because is it about who you were born, or is it about where you fit in? Mm-hmm. What world would you want to see for the future?
Yeah, so I think the first thing, and something I try to encourage, because I hear from people all over the world about, where do I fit in? And there's this and there's that, and I'm somewhere in between. And I hear primarily from people who are either, of mixed ancestry, or culturally, they're born in a Turkish community, but they weren't Turkish biologically, but that's how they feel. It's just like so many different perspectives of this, where there are people who are somewhere in between these boxes, and kind of excluding them or denying the group membership on this side and that side leaves people just kind of floating in space, in a sense of nomadic identity. And I feel like the one thing I try to encourage people is, who you are, whether it comes to your choice of hair, whether it comes to what you're wearing for clothes. You don't have to wear something, or fix your hair in a certain way, or speak a certain way, or do a certain thing just because somebody else says you should. So who you are, and you don't afford anyone else the right to tell you who you are. Yes. Because they don't know you, but for the future, I really do hope that, in terms of race relations, that we are able to really kind of counter and deconstruct and confront the colonial idea of race itself. That 500-year-old oppressive view. We know scientifically that the human race does not meet the zoological requirements for separate races, and yet we keep acting like it does. We keep acting like this is such a real thing, that we're in these boxes, and people are in between the boxes and all this kind of stuff. And I feel like there's systemic racism in all westernized societies as a result of this race worldview. And so to, confront that by really ending that view through education and awareness, I think is going to make it so much more productive and possible to end racism, to end prejudice, to end, just, not listening to people, prejudging. And so that's my hope, is that in some way I can continue to be part of that team that dismantles white supremacy, that ultimately, brings forth inclusion, equity, justice for everyone. Because inside every adult is that little kid who was either accepted or rejected, and by 2050, supposedly in the US, we're going to be a majority population of bi, tri, quad, you know, um, there's just so much global cross-pollination, I guess, that I feel like we're going back to our original roots, where in the motherland, in the continent of Africa, there's the most genetically diverse, you know, DNA profile. And we all go back to a Black mother. So, I mean, technically we're all part of the Black human race, you know, if you really want to codify it, but it's just like, you know, this one little group, you know, Europeans started acting like they weren't part of that, you know, like they were something different and special. And then 500 years later, we still have all this anxiety, all this oppression, you know, that we're trying to fight. So I really feel like we have to dismantle white supremacy in order to eradicate racism. And to do that, we have to question that race worldview. And everybody has to have that revolutionary kind of courage to make a personal choice of, I'm going to be myself. I'm not going to subscribe to this view and let this view or somebody else tell me who I am, because that's a miserable existence to try and constantly chase, you know, tell me what hairstyle, you know, what should I do with my hair and my clothes and it's just so off balance. You know, the only way to be balanced, I feel like, is to just be centered in who we are and to show up authentically, whether we're winning awards for it or whether we're being punished for it. You know,
that's very true. I love that answer. That's very true. We hope for a world where we all fit in. My final question is your book, In Full Color.
Mm-hmm.
Your book is really about helping us understand your journey and telling the story from Rachel's point of view, how you grew up, what you went through, and your different relationship with different people that came across in your life. It also helps us understand why you identified as Black, why it's not about the dress you're wearing, not about your looks, not about anything, but why you chose to identify as Black. And I think this is one of your key summary in the summary bit. Could you summarize that bit? If someone asked you, Rachel, to end this conversation, why did you identify as Black?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would just say, you know, and again, that's been one of the burning questions, right, from 2015 on, is to somehow come up with a soundbite. And I really do feel like my book is the answer to that question. But I'll be gracious and try to give you a couple sentences. But I do feel like, you know, I've been clear that racially I identify as human, culturally I affiliate as Black, because that's where I found my home. You know, more than in the white world, where I did not feel at home and I did not feel accepted and I didn't feel affirmed or like I even understood that perspective, to be quite honest. You know, I was always working against that perspective within my own mind, and then also with my siblings. And even in the South, you know, in college on it, you know, where I found my place of home was always within the Black community. So that's just, you know, that's where I feel at home. And I don't think it really has to be more complicated than that on the one hand. On the other hand, it is a full life of living to get there. And I think the book explains all those decisions along the way. And again, whether people, you know, agree or disagree, I think it's easy to stand from the outside and say, well, you should just, you know, say you're this or say you're that. And I can't, you know, I mean, after having studied books like The Origin and Evolution of a Worldview, Race in North America, The Nature of Race by Anne Morning, Fatal Invention by Dorothy Roberts. I mean, so many books by Black women who have actually decoded this thing of like, there's no such thing as race. And this is, you know, to be complicit and to say, I'm white because my biological parents said they're white, and because the world wants me to say I'm white, you know, is false. That's pretending. That's pretending that I actually agree with that worldview. And I don't. I fundamentally don't. I agree with the science that goes back to, you know, we're all from the continent of Africa. We all go back to a Black mother, and to deny that ancestry, I think, is disingenuous and has set up this whole system of racism and prejudice in the world. So that's my view. And I think, there's room to disagree, agree to disagree or whatever. I don't need everybody to call me Black. I don't need everybody's, kind of badge of approval, but I think it is important for us to speak our truth. And that's where I truly do stand philosophically. So.
Well, Rachel, I will start by thanking you because your book is so honest. You talk about being being in school, and we approach the Black kids and go sit with them when they're having dinner, when you're having school lunch. You talk about living in a Black neighborhood. You talk about helping your adoptive sibling to be able to for them to learn to do their hair. These are things that people miss. You've done so much work for the Black community, and from the bottom of my heart, I really want to thank you for this conversation because you spoke your truth. Now, whatever the world sees you as, I see you as Rachel, a human being who's making a difference to the community. And where you stand, whether you're Black or white, for me, it doesn't truly matter. I just see you as someone who's giving back and making a difference. And I applaud you. And I really hope that 2015 event will not take away your vision, your ambition, and your goal of keep being a voice for the community, because they need you. We need you. We need more and more people to stand up rather than we fighting each other, to keep standing up and keep believing that there is hope for that Black man, Black woman out there, the little girls and boys that have been born frequently and keep being told they are ugly because of their race. Thank you, and keep doing your great work. I really applaud you, and don't let anything stop you, not even the media, because the media cannot define you. Only you can define yourself. Thank you so much for this amazing conversation. Thank you. And
thank you so much for having me.
I encourage you all to read her book. It's truly amazing, and tell you an amazing story about her. Thank you.